Patrick Patterson's pumpkin patch. It said that Patrick Patterson came back from the war, a shadow of a man. He returned with a limp and a cane and resolute silence to the news that his father, the local undertaker, had passed away the day before his return. This meant that Patrick inherited his father's home, which sat beside the cemetery, and the burden of burying him on the same day. That very night, villagers reported seeing him toil by lantern light to dig his father's grave. Most people tried not to notice Patrick when they walked by. They would see him in their peripherals all throughout that summer, shoveling or laying sod or pruning hedges, but never daring to look directly at a man so broken. If anyone had, they might have noticed what he'd been planting in front of each headstone. Once autumn arrived, they were impossible to miss. The orange gourds grew and expanded each day, until a fully formed pumpkin sat atop each grave. The reactions were mixed. Some were angered, some were bemused, some were pleased, but no one could gather the courage to say a word to Patrick Patterson about them. That Halloween, a crowd formed in front of the cemetery gates. The light from 100 flickering candles garnered the attention of anyone who passed by. There, on the other side of the iron bars, were the flowing effigies of loved ones lost, their faces inexplicably and immaculately carved into the pumpkins. As they stood in awe, a lone figure hobbled down the crooked path from his home on the hill. Patrick regarded them silently before opening the gates and leading the mob of mourners ahead. There was weeping, there was laughing, there was singing. There were hushed, incredulous whispers as families and lovers and friends were reunited with those who had passed on, and mingling with the living were the voices of the dead, only heard by the ones longing to hear them most. This was their chance to say goodbye, to make amends, to reminisce, to reassure. On this incredible night, the veil between the dead and the living lifted, and they were able to meet again. Now, is there any truth to this story? This all happened long before I was born, and long enough ago that most of the ones who would have been alive to witness it have since been buried. So I only have stories that have been passed down to go by. But I believe them. I have to, for our sake. When I bought Patrick Patterson's old estate, he'd been dead for years. The house was abandoned, and the cemetery was maintained by landscapers the town hired. But I assured them I'd handle it going forward. All so I could be closer to you, my love. See, I worked really hard this summer, and it's finally paying off. The pumpkins have started to ripen, and it's nearing time. This Halloween, I hope to see you again, my dear. All hail the Pumpkin King. I think Luke is the first one to notice him. He is the new boy, freshly enrolled a few days before October ends. Like all new boys, people treat him like he is invisible. No one really pays much attention to him. I sit behind him in geography, and he is acting really weird. He is moaning and groaning, about a headache for one. His head is swelling and turning this bright carroty orange, veins throbbing and arteries pulsing. His teeth are falling out by the dozens, yellowed and decaying, and his breath smells like he had eaten a dead fish. He is always smiling, and he keeps on muttering about the Pumpkin King. Who is the Pumpkin King? Later that night, my head feels like it is about to split open. Simply put, it feels like all of my nerves are screaming at once. I take an aspirin, but it doesn't work. In fact, it seems to make the pain even worse. And every night I dream of him, the Pumpkin King. He speaks to me. Our time is coming. Every night I hear him. Every night my head hardens and swells and ripens and oranges. No longer soft as a peach, but rough and hard and husky. I grin though. The pain is going away, replaced by pure happiness. Every night I lose weight too, my body turning skinnier and a moldy green. I don't care. Food is not interesting anyway. Our time is coming. Every night I hear him, my Lord and Savior. On Halloween night I hear him again. Our time is here. I am ready. I know what to do. It's like instinct. I take my sharpest knife and walk outside. I see others doing the same. Joseph, Luke, all of them. I see some people trick-or-treating. They must see how great the Pumpkin King is. I pounce, not giving them time to cry out. With my knife, I carve out their faces, first gouging out their eyes and then carving out their mouths into a smile. The Pumpkin King's smile. Blood oozes out of their mouths. But they now look like him. They are complete with him. Just the rest of the town left, and finally we are together with him, the Pumpkin King. Am I the asshole for giving out candy? I'm an old fart who doesn't know how to use Reddit, so I apologize if there's any mistakes. I, a 72-year-old female, live in a neighborhood with lots of children. If they're not playing in the street, they're running back and forth from house to house. For the record, I don't mind it at all. I never had children of my own, and my husband died a few years ago, so I live alone. Hearing children play all day is a nice distraction from my quiet life. All the kids in the neighborhood love me. They call me Granny Smith because I have an apple tree in my front yard that I let the children pick fruit from. They're very sweet children. Their parents also really like me too. I occasionally get surprised with homemade cookies or cake. They even give me Christmas presents every year. It's very nice of them, and I appreciate it very much. My real claim to fame around the neighborhood isn't apples, though. It's that I have a tradition of giving out candy at the end of each month. Everyone calls it monthly Halloween. Kids come from all over the neighborhood to get some of Granny Smith's candy. I love doing it because I love seeing the children get so excited. Seeing children get excited to eat my candy warms my soul. Lately, however, there had been some problems with the neighborhood children. Apparently, I've become a target of harassment. I don't know who the specific children are, but in the past couple months, I've had terrible things done to me. My house has been TP'd several times, and my car has been egged at least twice. The worst one was when someone took spray paint and wrote obscenities on my garage door. I don't know what's gotten into these kids. In addition to making me mad, it also makes me sad, too. I love these kids, and it hurts that they would treat me like that. The end of the month was approaching, and the children, as usual, were getting excited about monthly Halloween. But I wasn't. I was sick and tired of being treated like garbage. Children just aren't respectful these days, and it's an utter shame. It made me angry that they hadn't been appreciating me. I decided that I was going to play my own prank on the children. Right before the first child rang the doorbell for monthly Halloween, I took a few razor blades and shoved them into the candy. I put razor blades in at least 10 pieces. I made sure to rewrap the candies so that it wouldn't look suspicious. When the kids rang the doorbell, I acted like everything was normal. I gave out the candy, and the children were so excited. They were so happy that they thanked me over and over again. They acted so sweet that it kind of made me feel bad. Perhaps I was too harsh. After all, they're just kids. Am I the asshole? I finally took my Halloween decorations down. The temperature hovered near freezing on Halloween night. Perfect weather as far as I was concerned. I carved 2 pumpkins, one for me and one for my daughter. I placed them on top of our scarecrows, stepping back to admire my work. Wow, Pop, you really messed up your eyes. Denise chuckled. I didn't care much about mine. I put all my effort into hers, knowing I would have to wait such a long time before she visited me again. There was a time when I carved 3 jack-o'-lanterns. After Terry and I split, I kept the tradition alive, knowing how much it meant to Denise. She grabbed my hand, eager to walk the neighborhood. Unlike most of the spooks around us, we weren't out to knock on doors and ask for treats. We simply enjoyed our time together, knowing we only had a few weeks before she went back. Instead, we walked and observed the beauty of this incredible night. We stayed out until midnight. Our scarecrows greeted us on our way to the door. Denise rapped on hers. Like a block of ice, she grinned. The next few days were even colder. We laughed giddily at the frozen pumpkins, excited by the symbolic preservation of our favorite holiday. The cold stretch was replaced by an unusually warm few days. The jack-o'-lanterns began to visibly suffer. Their skin started to wrinkle. Their features drooped. I found shadier spots to keep them from melting. After a week, the warm weather was once again taken over by the foreshadowing of the winter chill to come. By then, the pumpkins were barely retaining their shape. We spent most of our time outside with our decorations, getting more than a few strange looks from neighbors passing by. It didn't matter to us one bit. As we reached the middle of the month, we both avoided talking about her departure. She never stayed with me for Thanksgiving, no matter how hard I fought to keep her a little longer. Our fun was more forced now, saddened by how quickly our time had gone by. When we went out yesterday, the pumpkins were shrunken and grotesque, collapsing into themselves. Denise looked at them grimly. Well, Pop, it looks like that's it. Tears always streamed down my face when I took Denise's jack-o'-lantern down. I did my best to stop myself, but I never could. She gave me the same sad smile each time, reaching out to me as she continued to fade away. She kissed my cheek, and then she was gone. Gone until next year, only with me until the weather rotted the pumpkin that housed her spirit. She died 4 years ago, tripping down the stairs in an elaborate witch costume I made. Terry never moved past her death. She didn't blame me, but couldn't bear to live here with Denise's memory. Now the only night I ever look forward to is Halloween, and each day after that, the weather stays below freezing. The Halloween Club. The orange on the horizon grew smaller and smaller. The darkness of night was claiming the Halloween sky. Little Jessica traversed through the briar-carpeted forest and over the crumbling cemetery terrain. She finally caught up with her older brother and his friends. "Dude, what's that little dork doing here?" asked his friend with an attitude. "Yeah, she's totally too girly for the Halloween club," said the other friend. Jessica's lip began to quiver and her knees began to shake. "You never let me do anything you do. It's not fair. You always have so much fun without me." An evil grin grew on her brother's face. "Well, since you followed us all the way out here, you might as well join." Jessica's face lit up with happiness. "But first, you must do something really, really bad." Jessica thought for a second. "Oh, I know what to do. I'll be right back. It's gonna be a surprise," she said before running back the way she came. Jessica snuck into her house through the garage. She grabbed a hacksaw right before opening the door, which led to the kitchen. From there, she could see David watching TV on the couch. She didn't like him. She thought her old father was better. Why did Mom have to marry him? Jessica looked around. Mom wasn't home, just David. Jessica tiptoed towards him. His back was facing her. He just sat there and absorbed the garbage the screen telecasted. He was not at all aware of his surroundings. Later, Jessica scampered up the hill once again. Her brother and his friends were still there. She went up to them, placing her candy bag on the ground. "Look what I did," she said, before pushing the bag over, causing a severed head to roll out. David's severed head. All the boys jumped back and screamed in horror. "Can I join the club now?" "I bet none of you have ever done something this bad." Jessica's brother directed his gaze from the head to her, his face like granite. Jessica, I was just messing with you when I said that." The chat. Samantha and Finn had no idea who each other were, let alone know the other even existed. But both already had one thing in common. You see, they both liked to go into the chat of their favorite horror narrator on YouTube 3 times a week during the live streams. They both noticed their YouTube handles scroll down the screen, chat after chat, but never really talked much. Finn's was Bear 18 and Samantha's was B12. After a while, they made friends with multiple people in the chats. Samantha was kind, to everyone she came across in there, and Finn started to notice that. While Finn acted a fool, always trying to get people to laugh, and Samantha began to notice that too. Finally, one day, a simple hello broke the ice, and later on, Finn made a cute joke about Samantha's height, and that's all it took. From then on, they talked every chat, getting to know each other, joking, a little cute flirting here and there. They were truly becoming good friends, with the hopes of something more. At least that's what they both wanted, but not sure the other was feeling the same way. The next few weeks, they got closer and closer. Then came Halloween night, and their favorite YouTube narrator was having a Halloween stream. They both popped in the chat, of course, anxiously awaiting to talk to one another. Finn saw that B12 name pop up on the screen and said hello. Samantha saw that Bear 18 pop up and said hello also. For over an hour they talked, flirting back and forth, having a good time. But after a few comments back and forth, Finn noticed another name in the chat start saying some strange things. Now these comments weren't directed directly at them, but it did seem like this person was making strange remarks. After one of them made a comment to the other, but Finn shrugged his shoulders and decided not to give it a second thought, and went back to talking with Samantha. The stream continued on, and Finn asked Samantha where she lived. She replied, Salem, Massachusetts, and Finn said, "No shit, so do I." Not long after that, though, a chat name popped up called the Sheriff, and it typed, "Wow, you two, so do I." Both noticed it, but didn't say anything, because once again it wasn't directed at them. The stream was now coming to a close, but Samantha and Finn were having such a great time, they didn't want it to end. So, since they lived in the same place, they decided to spend Halloween night together and meet up in front of a restaurant. They didn't want other people to know in the chat where they were meeting up, just in case. So Finn told Samantha to meet him over in the comments section on a video of another YouTuber they both listened to, and they would discuss where to meet there. But before they left, they saw a comment pop up, say, "I'll see you there soon," from the Sheriff. Finn definitely saw it, but didn't want to say anything to Samantha and frighten her. They both went over and discussed what restaurant to meet in front of. It was a place called Dia de los Muertos, a great Mexican restaurant they both liked to go to, but had no idea the other did as well. They both said goodbye and agreed to meet each other there in an hour. Finn got dressed and left 30 minutes later. As he approached the restaurant, he got a notification on his phone saying someone liked and left a comment on your post. Well, Finn opened it because it was the video that him and Samantha were commenting on, so he just assumed it was her, saying she might be a little late or something. But when he saw the response to his comment, he stood and froze. It was a comment from the Sheriff. It read, "See you two at the restaurant. I love Mexican food, and happy Halloween." He stood there not knowing what to do. This definitely confirmed, though, that this creep was directing those strange comments at them the whole time in chat. Finn continued to the restaurant, deciding not to tell Samantha any of this, though, not wanting to frighten her. He got to the front of the restaurant, but didn't have to wait long. There she was, walking towards him, 5'2", long brown hair, with caramel blonde highlights, and a figure that just wouldn't quit. They both stood looking at each other, excited, kind of surprised the other actually showed up, but relieved that they did. Finn looked at her and said, "Samantha, is that you?" She stared at him and said, "Yes, Finn, but you can call me Sammy." He smiled at her and said, "Okay." They then hugged and went inside the restaurant. They looked around and found a nice table by the window. The restaurant was pretty packed for a Halloween night. The atmosphere was dark and dim, people talking. Finn pulled the chair out for Sammy so she could sit. Then Finn went and sat down across from her. The song "I Love You" from the Bees was playing. He looked at her and smiled. This night was already starting out just as he imagined it. They ordered their food, sat and waited, and chatted for about a half hour until their food arrived. A few minutes into their meal, however, Finn looked out of the window and saw a hooded figure standing across the street. He was in all black, looked like he was wearing a black hood, and had a plague doctor mask on. Now he couldn't be sure, but it looked like the figure was staring at them. Finn interrupted Sammy, who was beginning to ask him about something, and pointed at the figure. "Does it look like that guy is staring at us, Sammy? Or am I just imagining things?" Finn asked confusedly. Sammy looked out the window and over at the figure, but when she did, the figure raised his hand and made a slashing gesture across his throat, then pointed at them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was towards us. That's some creepy shit, Finn. I don't like it." "Oh, it's okay, Sammy. It's just Halloween. I'm sure that guy is just messing around." As she began to look reassured, Finn felt a vibration in his pocket. It was his cell phone. He apologized and checked to see who it was. It was another notification from the sheriff that read, "You two sure look cozy. How's the meal? Enjoy the rest of your night. See you two a little later." Finn's eyes widened from the shock, then turned his head quick out to the street. There was nothing. No one was standing there anymore. Sammy could see something was wrong. Finn didn't want to tell her, but he knew he couldn't keep hiding this from her. He explained everything that had happened throughout the night, from the chat to the comments to now. Sammy began to get frightened. Finn could see her start to tremble. He reached across the table and grabbed her hand and told her, "Everything's going to be all right, Sammy. I won't let anything bad happen to you, as long as you're with me. Now relax and enjoy the rest of the night." They finished their meal and left the restaurant. "What now?" Sammy asked. Finn then brought up going to the movie theater to check out the new horror movie. She agreed and off they went. It was just a short walk from the restaurant. They continued walking, and after a few blocks, Finn turned around and noticed that the same hooded figure in the distance was standing there on the other side of the street. He leaned over and whispered into her ear that he thought that guy was following them. She tensed up, gripping his hand tightly. They could see the theater a block away in the distance. He held her hand, and they began to sprint towards the theater. When they reached the front of the ticket booth, they turned around, and he was gone again. They decided, since they were there and around lots of people, to still go inside and watch the movie. After an hour and a half, the movie was done. They both love horror movies, so they enjoyed it. As they reached the front door to leave, they were both filled with a slight ounce of trepidation, not knowing if the figure would be out there, waiting. They took a deep breath and walked out. They scanned both sides of the street. The figure wasn't there. Finn looked down and asked Sammy if she would like to come back to his place to watch their two favorite horror movies, Halloween and Scream, to end the night. She stared back up at him and said, "Of course, that would be a great way to end the night." Finn was relieved because he didn't want to leave her alone at her home with that strange figure following them. and Sammy was relieved because she didn't want to be alone for the same reason. Finn's home wasn't far from the theater, so he grabbed her hand and off they went. As they got halfway to his place, he felt uneasy, so he turned around, but no one was there. He turned back forward and continued to walk, reassuring Sammy everything was okay. When they reached his house and walked up the front steps of the porch, Finn noticed the front door cracked open. He froze for a second, but just figured his dumbass roommate left the door open when he got home from the Halloween party he went to. His roommate had done this before, and tonight was Halloween, so he figured he probably got drunk at the party and forgot to close and lock the door when he got home. He pushed the door open and they walked in. Nothing seemed out of place and nothing was stolen. He peeked down the hallway and his roommate's door was closed, so Finn started to feel relieved. He took Sammy's things and put them on the dining room table, while she went to sit down on the couch. As he was putting his things down, his phone started to vibrate in his hands. It was another notification from the sheriff. Shit. You have to be kidding me, he thought. Finn opened the notification. It read, I hope you two had a fun night. Maybe a little later, I'll give you two a Halloween treat. Finn was done with this by now. They're safe in his home, and there was nothing to worry about, he thought. He put the phone down on the table, walked over and put Halloween on, then sat on the couch next to Sammy. Towards the end of the movie, they began making out, but after a few minutes, loud pounding came from the front door. They both sat up on the couch quick, both looking at each other with a worried look on their faces. They sat there for a minute in silence. Finn then got up and went to the peephole. He looked through, but nobody was on the other side of the door. He took a deep breath and opened it. As he did, he realized he was making a classic horror movie mistake. When there's a strange knock at the door, don't go out and investigate. As he opened the door and stood in the doorway, he surveyed the front of his house, but nothing was there. But when he looked down on the ground, he gasped. There sat the plague doctor's mask that the stranger wore, and next to it was a note, written in blood, that read, Happy Halloween, Finn and Sammy. Hope you enjoy the treat. Finn noticed that a blood trail went from the porch to the side of the house. He followed. The bloody trail led him to a side window that was open. It was his roommate's bedroom. Finn peeked inside, and what he saw horrified him, and he screamed out in terror. There in the bedroom, hanging over the side of the bed, with his throat slashed, was his roommate. And on the walls written in blood were the words easily hacked, easily found. I'll be back. Remember when Halloween used to be scary? You remember when Halloween used to actually be scary? Derek scoffed his agreement, gesturing to all the cutesy decorations and inflatable black cats adoring our neighbors' lawns. It's a real shame. I miss it, he said, pulling grocery bags from the trunk. I'll be surprised if we even get any trick-or-treaters tonight. Last year was a complete bust. We walked up the driveway, past the graveyard, ghosts swinging in the wind, a dozen grinning jack-o'-lanterns, the bloody mannequin on the porch to the front door, and found a flyer taped to it. Now this is more like it. Check this out. Derek passed me the note, which had been crudely scrawled in ink that resembled dried blood. Beware. Do not open your door for anyone this Halloween. You never know who might be knocking. Creepy, I shivered. Must be a prank, right? A pretty good one, I'd say. At least someone else gets it, huh? He laughed. As the sun set, my nerves had started to get the better of me. I kept glancing at the note on the counter until I finally couldn't take it anymore. You don't think this is real blood, do you? I blurted. No, Derek chuckled. Of course not. Okay, but it could be a threat. Come on. Weren't you just saying how you wished Halloween was scary? Don't tell me you're afraid, Derek joked in a ghostly voice. Besides, it's not like anyone ever... A sharp rap on the door made me jump. Derek grinned at me. I wonder who it could be, he teased, turning to answer it. Derek, wait! I watched from around the kitchen cabinets with my breath held as the door swung open to reveal trick or treat! A couple of kids in superhero costumes beamed up at Derek as he stuffed a handful of candy bars into their bags. He came back over with a huge grin on his face. That was a close one, huh? He mocked. It turned out to be the busiest Halloween we'd had in years. Derek was ecstatic, and even donned his werewolf mask to greet our spooky visitors. It was great to see him having so much fun, and it rubbed off on me. I stayed out on the porch with him for a while, but it was chilly, and I was getting tired. I'm going in. Have fun, I said, pecking his werewolf cheek before curling up on the couch to fall asleep to Young Frankenstein. It was late. The clock read midnight when incessant knocking woke me. I stumbled over to the door, still half asleep, and realized I'd accidentally locked Derek out. I peered through the peephole, greeted by his werewolf mask. Sorry, I dozed off. I apologized as I opened the door for him. Hope you're not frozen. It didn't take me long to notice the blood dripping from his hands, or that the eyes staring at me from behind that hideous mask were not Derek's. Thank you so much for joining me. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess_of.darkness or Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. Also, please send me your stories or poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. Until next time.